Now turn it over to council for discussion, consideration, direction. I know Ms. Ramswell was first.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, when I first brought this issue to council last fall, it was with a heavy heart because, you know, we're a city that relies on tourism. I mean, truly, we don't want to do anything to deter tourism because we rely on it. But I have very serious concerns, which is why I did bring it forward. I've been taking notes and listening to everyone, and you've all hit on some very, very critical points. The first thing that I believe is probably the most important is quality of life. You know, we need to look at our quality of life as full-time residents and not necessarily be so concerned about the quality of life of our tourists. Hey, they're having a great quality of life. They're on vacation in Destin. We get to live here year-round. So, you know, it's very important that we not have our quality of life challenged while we're trying to continue bringing more tourism in. The tourists are here. They're going to keep coming. We have a beautiful town. The second issue I see is the safety issue. And when I spoke with Chief Sasser of the Destin Fire Control District, he had two primary concerns. And that was the trucks, in many cases, are not able to get down to the streets to respond to a call. And then his other concern was, are there enough exits, enough ways out of a building for, 35 people to get out in the event there is an emergency? And so that, to me, is extremely important, especially when you look at the photos of some of the bunk rooms that have been built. You know, that's fine. Maybe they're legal. It depends on how they're done, and that's up to codes and a bunch of different restrictions and levels of authority. But ultimately, is the entire building, when looked at as a whole, is it going to be safe? And will sheriffs, will fire department, will they be able to get there and respond? The third issue I see is zoning and legality. The first thing is short-term rental use is a business. I think Mr. Shelton actually said that. Short-term rentals, it's a business. And these are in our residential areas. I mean, you look at our own zoning and our own coding, and we've got high-density residential, low-density residential, and the MDR, which for lack of, I think it's middle or something moderate. Ken can probably fill in that word for me. But all of them have an explicit prohibition of commercial motels and commercial hotels. Guess what? These single-family residences are essentially being used as hotels and motels in residential areas. And I have a problem with that on a large scale. Secondly, you've got to look at this as a commercial use. Is our infrastructure able to support commercial use in a residential area? And that hits on, streets, traffic. Are they wide enough? The sidewalks, the trash, the water. I mean, infrastructure encompasses a bunch of different things, and we're already seeing problems related to infrastructure being able to handle the load that we have now in some of our residential areas with the tourists that are arriving. The next issue I see is consistency. Already on our books, we have restrictions in place for long-term rentals and full-time residents. There aren't occupancy restrictions on short-term rentals. So in a sense, you can see it as we're penalizing those of us that live here full-time or are renting for 6 months or longer because we have restrictions and short-term doesn't. And to me, there's not any equity, and we need to make sure we're consistent across our books. Next is protection. And I see this both as a protection of our investment as full-time residents, and also protection of our home values, because negative images from piles of trash, cars parked on sidewalks, on the yards, this is a negative image, and it calls to mind things that, do I want to live in that neighborhood when I'm going to have 14 cars parked on the yard part of the year? And that's obviously an exaggeration, but in many cases it's actually not, and it's something we do need to be concerned about. Next, I go back to the fact that These are single-family homes. Think about that. Single-family homes. And we're seeing lots of families packed in. And it's not the intended purpose. Now, with that said, I mean, I have nothing against rentals and short-term rentals. I really don't. It's, as we heard from Mr. Jeff Robinson, I believe the name, earlier, it's the excessive occupancy that concerns me and what I'm dealing with here tonight, as are all of you. You know, as a city and as a council, we're really charged with looking ahead, not just looking at what's happening right now, but what's in store for us, what's happening elsewhere that's looming ahead. And we heard tonight, talk about VRBO, we heard talk about Airbnb, and we heard from one lady earlier talking about the construction on Kokomo. These are all things that are coming. Airbnb is just, it's frightening to me, because who's looking at all this? Is anybody going through and matching the rentals on there to what's actually listed in a city? Are they paying taxes? Are we getting bed tax from this? There's just so many concerns that are involved in that. Then you hear about, in Flagler, Mr. Milo, who is essentially buying rental properties simply to try to herd, pardon the expression, I got blasted for this, herd them in like cattle and pack them in like sardines. But truly, that's what's happening, is a lot of folks are turning their homes into a commercial business. The more they can get in, the more money they feel like they can make. And, I have a problem with that. I don't think that's what we want overall in Destin. Certainly we want renters, we want short-term rentals, long-term rentals, but I don't think we want the image of, 40 people in a 9-bedroom home. It's just, it takes away from our quality of life, it takes away from the image of our community. And I think we all know what we moved to Destin for, and I don't think that was it. We've all hit on tonight code enforcement, and certainly there are some changes that need to be made and some things tightened and looked at and changes done for sure. But to me, that's not going to solve all the problems. We need to get to the root of the problem. And the root of all these problems, the parking, the noise, the safety issues, is the number of occupants. When I look at the community, and what we want as a community, what we want as a city, we need to protect ourselves. We want to protect our values. We want to protect our investment. And so it's really in this vein and with this in my heart that I would like to move to have council council and staff look at drafting an ordinance. And I would fall in line with, I appreciate Mr. Robinson's 2+4. I know we discussed 2+2 at the prior council meeting in the fall. As a middle ground, I would move for 2+3. And that's my thoughts. I think, we go back to, as a city, we need to really take a look at where we're headed, what is our future, let's prepare for it, and let's protect ourselves. So thank you, and thank all of you for coming tonight and speaking.
Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. Mr. Miller, does that need to be in the form of a motion?
If that's the speaker's intent.
Okay. Is that your intent, Ms. Ramswell?
That is my intent. I
It's
would
your-
like to make a motion to direct staff to draft an ordinance.
Okay.
Do I need to be more explicit on the wants?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
I'll rephrase the entire thing. I'd like to direct staff to draft an ordinance that will restrict short-term rental occupancy to 2 persons per bedroom +3.
Is that it? Okay. Is there a second for the motion? Is there a second for Ms. Ramswell's motion? Okay, hearing none, that motion dies. Anything else?
That's all I have. I would hope somebody would jump on the bandwagon. Maybe you didn't like the +3, but I would hope that all of you would think about what everyone's had to say tonight and come up with perhaps a different motion.